So with that, we're going to switch to the next segment here, and I'll just briefly, I guess I'll start with you, Katrina. I'll just let you do the introduction here with the cloud connectors, and
I'm going to introduce Pierre, and then he's going to introduce us, right?
Okay. Or
all right, here we go.
I could do it the other way around.
Yes. So thanks, Ward. Thanks, Katrina. So hi, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you all for joining us. And first and foremost, let me introduce Katrina, who is she just joined us on Monday, and she is now joining us as our alliances and partnerships vice president. So we're thrilled to have her on board. We also have Jeff Tremblay, who is our CTO on the call. And we also have JP Willett, who is our sales director. So without further ado, Katrina, all yours.
Awesome. Am I sharing my screen properly yet?
Yes, you are.
All right, beautiful. Okay, so today we're going to go over the following. First off, some findings from the HR Tech Stack study that was done by HR.com. Then we're going to go over the good, the bad, and the ugly of integration experiences, and I'll welcome your feedback on that a little bit. And then some stories about how UKG and TCC have been working together successfully. I've only got a couple slides from this. If you want the full report, I do have access to it and would be happy to send it to anybody who asks me for it. The 2021 State of Today's HR Tech Stack report is done by HR.com Research Division, and this year's copy came out last month on the 21st of July. And I participated in this, as I did last year, on their advisory board. And here are some key takeaways. To gain competitive advantage, determine and address your tech stack's ability to integrate talent management solutions, ensure ease of configurability, reinforce the I can never get that one, corporate culture, automate HR administration, connect and align your work groups. Basically, what it comes down to is you need, as an organization, you need the right tools to get the right data. You need it to be accurate data. You need it to be accessible in your particular area. So you need to be able to access it from where you are. So if you're the payroll person, you need to be able to access the information you need in the systems you have access to. If you're in the talent acquisition area, you need to be able to access the information you need in the systems you access it through. So that's basically it. You need to be able to have access to accurate and timely information in order to get your job done and help your organization. This next slide tells us the same thing it told us last year, but tells it to us a little stronger. Integration continues to be the top problem in today's HR tech stacks. Same question as last year, and top answer. So survey question. Which of the following problems does your organization face in regard to your HR tech stack? Number one answer, systems are not well integrated and or cannot be integrated, 37%. So this is always the top answer, and this is just one of the slides, but if you go through the whole tech stack study, again, integration comes up again and again and again as one of the top problems that people have. So because it's their problem, it's your problem as a software vendor. We're going to go over a summary of the integration issues from the perspective of the employer organizations, and also then from the perspective of software solution providers. From the point of view of enterprise customers, their data is inaccessible. It's expensive to get it integrated, takes too long to get it integrated, or when they do get it integrated, data is inaccurate. It doesn't work, it breaks all the time, all these things they run into. That's the big complaints from the end users of integration, the enterprise customers. These problems become your problems. From the solution provider's point of view, it's a huge barrier to sales. That's the question that I always got when I was selling integrations or talking to solution providers. They said that I can't sell my solution because the first question out of their mouths is, do you connect with my XYZ? Do you connect with SAP, UKG, Workday, whatever it is? And if you can't say without hesitation, yes, absolutely, then you're right off the list. You don't even get any further than that first phase. So it's very important that you're able to answer those questions in the affirmative and then back it up when you get to the next level. So what I would like to do, these are all the ones that we came up with as far as what we hear from solution providers as their issues with integration. So if you could pick what you think are your top 3, we're going to take a quick poll. And Ward, do you do the poll? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. What do you think are your top 3 as a solution provider in your particular organization? What are your top 3 pains you feel? We'll give you a couple minutes.
Only 3. Can I pick them all?
No, you may not. No.
Just 3. All right.
And Larry, you're allowed to play.
That's right.
I had it memorized. So.
We need the Jeopardy music.
I forgot my Jeopardy music.
You
I've
don't
had
want
so
me to
much
sing
going
that
on
connection, but-
lately. I haven't had time to do anything.
Yeah, my family plays it on their Go Home Mini. And like, you can play a free game of Jeopardy every day. It's kind of fun.
Do I get to see how many people answered?
Yes.
Oh, if you don't see it now, then maybe
Then,
when I
no, I
end the
guess I
poll,
don't.
it'll probably
Okay.
pop up.
Okay.
Let's see. It looks like almost everybody that. Oh, no one more just popped in. Huh. Wow. These
And the
results are
answer
amazing.
is
I don't want to share it. It's power here. I've got the knowledge. All right, fine. I'm going to end the poll now. Last chance,
Okay.
last call
Last
for
chance.
polling. Answer. Just pick 3. All right. Here we go. Let's see. Share
I'm
results.
curious because I have no preconceived notion. I'm wondering. Okay. Oh, yes. That's the first thing I always heard too. Yeah. Barrier to sales. Because you can't even get to the other questions. You can't
Right.
answer that one. Yeah. Takes too long. Okay. Very cool. All right. And then the rest kind of
Scalability.
tied.
Well, scalability is up there too.
you'll need to scroll down, Ward, for the other.
Oh, I didn't see. Okay. They didn't make themselves. Okay. Lack scalability. Okay. Yeah, that's very important. All right. So scalability takes too long, barrier to sales. Well, I can fix all of that. All
And
right.
the cost is good. Yeah, do it.
I know. We'll move on. I'll stop doing that yet. Okay. Moving on. We'll get to that later. Are all integrations the same? I think we all know that that's a hard no. Depending on what your goals are with your integration strategy, generally that's what will lead you to pick these different pains. So I think because most of you are picking barrier to sales, your goal is probably more new business, right? And I think that that's probably true because a lot of the companies that we have on here today are younger companies that are looking to grow. If you were an older company, maybe you'd be looking, it'd be more important to you to get a closer relationship and retain your current customers or grow your customer base. So you might be looking for more of the deeper relationship. But depending on what you're looking to accomplish in the chart above, that's going to have an influence on what your top pain is that you're feeling, probably. I'm gonna just bust through these way too fast, guys. So I hope you have some questions brewing in your head, and feel free to interrupt me if you have them ahead of time. So I'm going to keep pausing. There's 3 integration strategies that come to mind. There's the do-it-yourself, point-to-point, built by your own team internally option. So you're all on your own. And then at the complete polar opposite side, there's the custom bespoke consulting house, completely out of your hands. It's somebody else's problem, kind of the opposite end. And then there's something in between. And each of these has their own positives and negatives, really. If we look at first the disadvantages of the 2 polar opposite ends. With a DIY, it can be expensive because you've got to pay for, maybe the big expense of buying a platform like MuleSoft up front, potentially the big expense of having expensive internal resources that know how to, develop integrations on that platform. Can be time consuming to build that internally. They break, it's your job to fix it internally. Low touch support and probably not HR specific experience or domain expertise. On the other side, the custom consulting firms, you are giving up your relationship with your prospects and your clients. It can be a lot more expensive than even the do-it-yourself version. It can be time consuming for your clients. So you're waiting for the integration to get done before you can really start moving with this customer. And even though they get a really good experience, you're left out of that relationship for quite a while. And once you do have a solution for your customer, you have something that's only for that customer. It's not scalable, it's not reusable, and it's going to be for sure expensive to maintain because that maintenance is in somebody else's hands as well. And you can't, your relationship or your customer's relationship is with that third party. And therefore yours is with that third party as well.
Yeah, I was
Go ahead.
surprised, just a comment on that. I was talking to the chairman of, I think it was OneSource Virtual, who's known to be a big Workday system integrator type custom house. And they actually make more money now just supporting what they initially set up than they do on the implementations and things like that, which means they're doing what you're just saying here. They're like managing the maintenance and all that custom work. It's a lot of money going into that, which, yeah, you think that could be used someplace else, right?
Yeah, that's the thing is, and you can't get away from it because it's usually on, a particular platform. It's just like when you have somebody who builds you a website and they own control of the website, then you want to change an image and you can't just go in and change the image.
$50 an image, right? Yeah.
Exactly. You got to pay. It takes, if you had access to it, you could just change it in 2 seconds, but you're in line to get your image changed. And also you're not as big a priority either because you're not buying a new website from them anymore. You just want them to go in and change your one image. It's going to be, $50, which, your priority level is way down. So it's really the same idea. So advantages of either solution. With the DIY point-to-point, you get to retain those client relationships, and it's certainly less expensive than the customized options. With the custom bespoke consulting, you have less work for your vendor, so your internal team can concentrate on your internal roadmap. Work on your own product, get your product up to snuff, continue to compete in the market. So if you're a brand new assessment vendor and you're doing magical things, but you're, 5 other people are also doing magical things and you're trying to compete in the market and keep up to snuff with the latest and the greatest, your internal team can work on that and not have to worry about integrations and building integrations and fixing integrations when they break. They're professionally built, managed, and monitored and maintained. You don't have to worry about that when they break. You don't have to worry about any of that because it's all handled by that custom consulting firm. And some of them also, of course, will have HR expertise if you pick one that has that. Now, the magical in between that is Cloud Connectors is offers those options, those advantages, but it's also offering you reusable workflows and integration templates. It offers you mass updatable workflows and quicker deployment without giving up the positives or the advantages of both the DIY option and the custom consulting house options. So you can get reusable, reusable, mass updatable workflows with quicker deployment, but you can also retain the control of your client relationships, retain the control of your prospect relationships. You still get an option that is much less expensive than customized options, but still configurable for client by client. You get something that's less work for vendors, so they can still concentrate on their own stuff. You get something that is professionally built, managed, monitored, and maintained, and you most certainly get something that is built and managed by somebody with expertise in HR and the HR tech world. And that is the Cloud Connectors. So I'm going to go over throw some logos at you, and then I'm going to tell you a couple stories. So here are some enterprise customers that we work with that are UKG customers as well. We do a lot of work with UKG, and I'll give you some examples of that. Wow, I'm going way too fast, huh? Here we go.
It's all right.
All right, so I love this story. Now this is Industrial Alliance. I know I'm not doing it with the right accent, Pierre, so I apologize. I'm going to call it IA. IA is a third-party benefits administrator, and they have a proprietary system where IA customers require automated data flow from their HRIS of choice, wherever their employee data is held. And there are so many different ones that if they connected to all of those, in no time, they would be working full-time as, on implementation, or excuse me, integrations. I'm trying to get this thing out of my way. So right now, TCC is managing 87 integrations for 41 clients, connecting to 13 different systems for IA. And 11 of those clients are UKG clients. So TCC extracts the data out of any of the client systems and transforms it into the proper format, and then drops the properly formatted file into an IA SFTP, which is then imported into IA. And it's conforming to the client rules, whatever they are. And a new custom integration takes 2 weeks to build, 2 weeks to implement with minimal issues and great service. That was a quote that I got from someone that I had interviewed about this particular relationship. And projects include integrations with UKG, Workday, and others. So key takeaways from this are that IA maintains control of their client relationships. IA is able to use all of their developer operations on their own client needs and their own internal research and development. The process works consistently, and IA is happy, and IA clients are happy, and IA clients don't even know the Cloud Connectors exist because everything's just running smoothly and they're only talking to them.
So Katrina, in the case with like the long-term care providers, they operate on both sides of the border. There's not as much change in Canada as there is in the US on different rules. But
IA works in both the US and Canada.
Right. So there's a rule engine built into a lot of these applications. How difficult is it then when a law changes, an adjustment can be made, the day the law goes into effect? I mean, how does that work with, integration platform as a service?
Okay, so IA is the provider, the third-party administrator. So they have a proprietary platform that sends the information to these. It's almost like what's that called? Benefix. So they send the information out to the different providers for their customers. TCC doesn't do that part.
No, I'm talking about changes in the rule engine with something that might happen. It's one of the big issues with integration is the government can break your integration if there's a rule change.
Oh,
So
well, yeah.
so
Anything that's
the ease
changed,
of
yeah.
those changes was my
Oh.
question.
Oh, well, the templates are mass updatable. So if the change is made in the template, it's instantly made across all of the templates, right? I mean, it's instantaneous, right? It would probably be a new version, and there would be a version that everybody would be moved to the new version.
Okay.
And then the next time the integration runs, it would be the new version of the integration.
So theoretically, one change and it cascades.
It wouldn't cascade. It would be next time it runs, it would be on the new version. Yeah, it's not like a dominoes. It would be running on that new version. The rules would be embedded in the integration itself, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. This one. Okay, this is a completely different kind of story. This is Group Robert. Group Robert is a large trucking and logistics organization, and they wanted to build their own integrations to their internal systems, but they couldn't get the data out of Ultimate Core and Kronos Dimensions. So the cloud connectors had, is it UltiPro Core connector, and they had a Kronos or UKG Dimensions now connector. And once they got access to those, they could build their own integrations into their other systems, which are SAP, and which are their on-premise SAP instance, excuse me. Using the pre-built connectors saved Group Robert tons of time and money, about 80% compared to starting from scratch. Key takeaways is that TCC has already built connectors for some of the most popular solutions in the market, like UKG Dimensions and UltiPro Core. Group Robert, excuse me, selected TCC because of our domain expertise in HR. TCC's professionally maintained connectors. They value that because it's any updates to the APIs are the responsibility of TCC and not Group Robert. Again, our solution works where others have failed. And JP, do you have a comment?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay, I thought I saw you. I thought I saw you biting your lip.
I don't know.
Something. Okay.
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
Okay. Your French accent is getting better and better.
Oh, Pierre corrected me yesterday because I was saying Robert, and I just
All good. All good.
Okay. All right. This is my last story. This one is about iSIMs. And about SIs or consulting firms. So consulting firms work with the cloud connectors to provide reusable integrations to their clients. Consulting firms work with TCC to ensure their clients have a great experience with their newly implemented software, and because of our specialized domain expertise in HR. So companies like Jeremy's. TCC has many live UKG and iSIMS integration clients, most referred by a single UKG consulting group. In this example, the consulting company has well over a dozen integrations between these two systems alone, with an average of 3 integrations per end client. And this is important because integrations that can become an income stream for these companies. Reusable integration bundles are offered, and they're quick to deploy, and our integrations work. So there's a trust factor there. Also, it is something that they can use to build as a separate income stream for their company with basically no additional work. A recap of the stories. What I really want you to, I thought I muted that. What I really want you to get out of this is that you can get through TCC customer control, quality work, a high value solution, and you don't have to give up one for the other. That's what it comes down to. Where in other cases, you have to choose between these 3.
Right.
Cloud Connectors is both scalable and flexible. Here's some of the logos of the solutions. The most popular solutions, these are the names that you'll know of the connectors that we have. Here are the most popular connectors that the UKG folks use. Here are some of the already built assessment connectors and the clients that are using them. So you know that we can build assessments. I think most of the people that that were invited to this event were assessment vendors of one sort or another. And Cloud Connectors choice allows for future flexibility. Full support when you need it, platform access when you don't, because the only constant in life is change. So I went through that in half the time. So let's see, does anybody have any questions about any of these slides? I can go back through and answer questions.
Can you go to the previous one with the just like showing
This guy,
the
so
assessment?
it has so much text.
Well, with the assessment one that just kind of showed the connections you made for the assessment companies.
This one. No, this one. No, wait, this one.
I think it was the second to last, but I guess just, some of the
Well,
point
this is the
solutions.
consulting firm. This is the tracking firm. This is the third-party administrator. You're talking about the assessment,
The
these
assessment,
guys.
yeah,
Okay,
that's the
sorry,
one,
this
yeah.
one.
Exactly. Thank
My
you.
apologies.
That's all right. Yeah, no, I'm just thinking, on behalf of some of the ISVs that are on the call here, that their clients are wanting the data to flow and they aren't maybe a partner with UKG, for example. How can, what can the cloud connectors do in that case if they're not a partners? Can you still help their customers data flow, or do they have to be a partner first? And we heard earlier it might take 5-6 months.
Yeah, they actually do not have to be a partner. And I've spoken to UKG, and for those that are in a closed category, we can also help them integrate. So they can still have an integrated solution without being on the marketplace.
And if they're answering an RFP or whatever, and the customer says, can you connect to UKG?
Right.
If they haven't done it yet, if they hire cloud connectors, they can say, yes, we can do it.
Yes. And so in that case, they could just, they could have a connector that they could put on their own marketplace, right? An integration that they could have on their own marketplace because the APIs are open. And they could
So
have they click to
hire,
activate solution that they didn't, that they don't need to have from that marketplace, save themselves 15%, right?
Sounds perfect. So in terms of the, let's say the first engagement is to get connected to UKG through cloud connectors, then they want to also connect for some customers to Oracle or Workday or whatever. Is that faster, easier? Is it same process? Is it, now that they've got one connector in place?
Well, once they have their own connector built, it would be quicker to build to the other platforms, certainly, because if they don't have a connector on the Cloud Connectors platform yet, once they have that built, then it's easier. Yeah. So if they've got say they've got a workflow or a bundle of workflows built between their platform and UKG, then the next one to Oracle and to Workday and to Mickey Mouse or whatever it is, it's going to be a lot faster because they've already got their connector on the TCC platform. So half the work is done. Or 40%. I don't know what's the accurate percentage you think. So it is quicker because that first initial connector build out is, big part of the plan, because we've never seen the API before. We've never seen, all that.
That's about right, Katrina. I would say like 50 because
Yeah.
there's always like there's two halves to an integration, right? So let's say you've got UKG on one side, you've got cloud connectors in the middle, and then you've got that assessment vendor on the right.
Right.
So typically with not just UKG, but with many software, we know and we've worked with, the HR software that's going to be in play. So that half or so is done. Then we just need to focus on whoever, the assessment software. So that's one of the reasons why it's much faster.
Right. It's a matter of like, are you connecting two unknowns? Are you connecting, two unknowns, one unknown?
Yeah, and
it's usually one
sometimes,
unknown, right?
Yeah, but we have not connected with all HR software out there. There are too many, and there are new ones every other week. So sometimes it's going to be too unknown. But one thing that we do over and over and over is work with APIs on HR software. So even if it's a new one that we don't know, that's what we do day in, day out. So, chances are we're going to be pretty quick to learn it. And the newer ones are usually easier to work with than the older ones. So, but there's going to be unknown to unknown. But again, that's what we do day in, day out. So we're pretty good at it.
Right.
And half of the new assessment companies have been created in the last 10 years. So it's a remarkable surgence in that space. JP, I would like to ask a question. So the idea of just the hub, a point to point, that's the way we've been traditionally looking at HR. But using your examples from Benefit and from the trucking industry, they moved beyond that. They started realizing that they're half-empty trucks. What can we connect to make sure that we can solve the complete needs? So a lot of the intelligence that have been built into a more holistic approach of integrations haven't arrived in HR yet. And so I'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on how assessments and maybe multiple assessment flows fit into a more a talent acquisition hierarchy of information. In other words, it's not just point to point, but literally the aggregation of insight.
You mean like, so taking
like quality of hire? How can you reach quality of
so
hire
you're talking,
by just having point to point?
Yeah. So in that case, you'd need to have some sort of analytical overlay. So you've got different aspects, because there are a lot of these assessments that are coming out are looking at completely different things. So if you had endless amounts of money and you could have data flowing in from fatigue data analysis or assessment companies or systems, and then you had systems that had skills and aptitude assessments, and you had things coming in from, I don't know, education systems, and then you had them from, I don't know, ancestry.com. You could probably get it down to where you could say people with dogs that are left-handed and have blood type B are going to make great accountants, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it could get silly but I think they're going to have something like that where it all goes into one. I mean, that example is ridiculous, but you've got all these different sort of things that people are measuring.
Does Cloud Connectors have a way of justifying the cost of assessments? Is there like an ROI calculator that could be beneficial to helping make those decisions of going to more sophisticated integrations rather than just, hey, let's move data instead of into a file cabinet, let's move it into an electronic file cabinet?
I would think just versus alternatives, I would think, right, Pierre? Or do you have another sort of option?
Yes, but we also have an ROI calculator that we're almost finished with, and it's going to be able to put some numbers. So definitely that is something that we have that we can share.
Yeah, versus manual, or what is it? What is it based on? ROI for versus manual data entry, or versus?
It's a mix of both. It's manual, it's automated, but it's also if you have built-in stuff versus an iPass like ours.
Oh, like reusable versus building it custom one point to point.
Because you got all the maintenance. Yeah, you got all the maintenance fees, the internal maintenance fees, and everyone that you have to hire to maintain everything. So huge internal costs. So that's what
cool.
You haven't been through your orientation yet, Katrina. New employee orientation.
No. I did go through, they actually had an orientation. This is the first company in 20 years that actually had an orientation, gave me some stuff to do. Yeah. I was pretty impressed. I'm like, what do you mean there's paperwork?
Hey, on that note, one question for the cloud connectors would be, what do you see within your clients of the proportion of solution providers or vendors that have a separate charge for the integrations versus if that charge is absorbed and baked in? Any kind of ballpark trend that and are you seeing anything changing? Like, for example, with UKG, probably have to buy the separate connector to, if you're an assessment provider, but then others might want to have just that be included in offering. I was just kind of curious if there's any kind of rule of thumb that you've observed just in general.
I would, our observations right now on the field is that people are baking in the costs more and more because they definitely understand you have to be integrated in order to be able to sell and be able to sell across enterprise companies, right? So they bake it in. A few years ago, I'd say 3-4 years ago, most of the partners that we were working with were definitely not doing that. They were just taking our costs and trying to move it to their actual customer. So it was more of a resell of a solution. Right now, I see that the last ones that we signed were all baking it in because it made sense and it allowed them to build way and sell way more of their own solutions. So that's the trend that we're seeing right now in the market. It is a shift, and people are realizing more than ever, how important it is to be fully integrated. And it definitely helps you sell your own solution to enterprise level customers.
Because you can't just have like, I have an API. That doesn't mean you're integrated.
Correct.
Right. And I think that's one of the kind of misnomers that
a lot of people say that though, which is not, you have to, yeah. And I think that before the price was too high that they couldn't absorb it. Because then if they absorbed it, then their price was too high versus their competitors.
Right.
And their competitors would just sell it. So you were looking at, 10 versus 15 because one was baking it in and one wasn't, that it wouldn't work. But because your prices are so low with the reusable,
and then it also comes into like, if there's an update, like, I mean, the world is massively changing and so is software, right?
Yeah.
So maybe one of the old trends was, well, we didn't really do the integration, somebody else did. So if there was an update, it's kind of customer base's problem to deal with it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to make some major advancements in your product and your offering, what is the impact? If you're baking all that in, you need to be able to update those things potentially en masse.
Yeah.
Right. So just kind of thinking out loud.
Yep. It's a competitive edge now instead of an add-on.
Right.
To have it included. But people have to be educated too, or else they're not going to see the difference. I think. A lot of what I've done is just tell people what questions to ask, because they, catching them after they've made the purchase is not, sometimes they've been sold a bill of goods that is not actually what they bought. But what else?
What are some of the from an assessment perspective, what are some of the lessons learned that if you're going to market and you're an early stage assessment company versus the ones that really have figured this out and made the mistakes and so forth from a go-to-market perspective? Just wondering if you're seeing any difference between those that are green and those that have paid their dues in this regard.
Some of these need the actual data sent over, and they need to know you need to know what they're going to do with the data. because sometimes a link just won't do. And I know there was in the past, I saw a lot of people where they were just sending the link back, which is easier oftentimes. But more recently, I've been hearing that people want the data sent over, but there needs to be a place to put it. So there might be some alterations that need to be done to the source of record for these employee, the employee source of record. So you have a place to put this, or it's going to have to be put in some analytics platform so that it can be put in there so they can run the reports they want to pull on this. Because if you're sending new data over into a employee record where that information wasn't used before.
So the assessment data may not have a proper home in
Right.
the system of record or the destination.
Right.
And then how and in what ways does the user, the HR professionals, decision makers, hiring managers, leaders, whatever, how do they interact with that system of record, their manager portal? What does that look like? So it's not just like bringing the data back and forth. It's what's happening on the user experience side.
Right. Who's accessing it? What are they doing with it? Because they didn't used to maybe run reports on how somebody's processing through or what their aptitudes were. How they fit into a group might not have been a field. That they wanted to run. It might have been sitting, it only recently would be something that would sit off in a third-party platform. But now they want to bring that into the core system and run reports on that data against other data that's in that core system.
Right.
In certain, like they want to look at the engineering department and this other data with that data. So things are changing.
It would be, I know we've got an event tomorrow on the analytics side of things, but it would be interesting to hear from some analytics leaders on what, if they're seeing any interesting trends along the lines of, well, are we going to bypass the system of record? So if you think about like some of the newer platforms that are out there, they, the way that that experience and what it is that they're looking at, just completely, are you going to really re-architect that on the system record, or how are you going to bring these platforms together, right? And do you just put it into the repository? Is that happening? I'm just kind of curious as I've been thinking about, all of these new players and the disruption that's happening and the innovation that's happening in our space.
Yeah. Well, UKG will make the alterations and Workday will tell you to stick it.
So depending upon who.
Well, really, there's a lot of data warehousing that's always gone on. It's used to be a lot more popular, and I think you're right, Marilyn. It's probably gone out of vogue a bit until now. People are starting to realize, oh, wait a minute, we have all these point solutions. Data's out there. Who's bringing it together? If the core provider's not doing it, somebody has to bring it together so that the analytics can do their magic. And yeah, it's a huge burden for even just some of the point solutions like a recruiting CRM. It's like, in order to know, is it working? Like Larry mentioned earlier, quality of hire, you got to have these different data points or you're not measuring anything. And if you're not properly connected into those solutions, doesn't matter what the core solution is doing. Data warehouse, I think, would be, it's in one hand, it's necessary, but it's also dangerous because you're right. Then it's like, where's
it's
the
got
data?
It's got to be secure too. Nobody wants to run a data warehouse.
Yeah.
And it's the use of the data and the enhancement of its use. And this is a big reason why SAP bought the assets of Swoop Talent.
Swoop Talent, you just read my mind there, Larry, is that they're talking about the fragmented data sources. It'd be interesting to hear from Gentis about this, Michael, if you're on audio, because with what your business does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly part of our business. If you talk about people analytics, that's exactly what we are doing. I mean, originally we started out being an org charting solution, but since we developed the solution for more than 20 years, there's a lot of people analytics now within the tool. We have dashboards, we have sunburst graphics and things like that. And a lot of our customers are global, so they have multiple systems in place. And exactly what we are talking about here today, how to get hold of all the data and then really not only have the data, but also make it consumable for a human being. That's what we are very often talking about. And certainly we have a certain niche in the market if it comes to people analytics, but everything that makes sense to be visualized alongside the organizational structure of an organization, that's where we are extremely good at. And that's a key point. Meanwhile, also, if you think about modeling new structures in your organizations, how do those data change if you have KPIs like span of controls or even data from finance integrated in that? How do those numbers change when I start moving people around, things like that? So that's something where we see a lot of interest in the market and a lot of our customers using our solution for that kind of purpose.
I recall being at different trade shows with Michael and his teams over the years, and it used to be we just geek out on the data flow, okay? And everybody's adjusted to the fact that you can't be a geek. You've got to actually bring it to where it'll actually have remarkable, noticeable change by the individual. So I've loved to watch. I love to see how you've made that adjustment from an org chart to literally organizing the chart.
That was well said, Larry. One of the things that I've always believed about assessment and any kind of measurement, and there's a lot of this happening. I mean, if you look at the whole category of DEI and whichever acronym we're using today, but or employee engagement, it's all a piece of measurement. And all of that ends up being an analytics play. So what you're looking for is pattern recognition. Right. So not only do we want to have, kind of the ability to measure, we need, where do we store that? How do we view it? And how do we understand the change over time? Right. And so, and when there's always kind of like a piece of these things happening, but I think if we're only thinking about the data flow of the direction, like to and from, and where it resides, without what is the user experience that happens, and how is this data being understood and decisions being made by the organization, it's a real mess. So we really need each other for ultimately it to work. To truly work.
Each of these groups, Marilyn, so different groups have actually surrounded themselves with their own use of the X. I mean, even with SAP, it's the human experience management. And then you've got, Gartner fighting against it. It's an application framework. And so we can't even agree on some of the terms of how we bring it together. I think we'll continue to go back to HR unless we can make that exodus to work, workforce. But work tech should be a play in this. And that's part of what we're talking about here is how do you get your work done?
Right. Well, and it's really up to the vendor community to expand our thinking more broadly than our solutions to really bring, how are we solving problems for the ultimate end buyer? And that's when we knock the ball out of the park, right? Is when, and a lot of times that happens when we as solution providers in the space, we get together and we do have motions that are really more of go to market together. And so it's not just like selling our own thing. It's the value that we bring to the clients when we have multiple pieces that are working really well to solve that problem. And oftentimes it's not a single vendor, but most of the time it's not where that truly solves the problem. It requires us to work together. It was kind of interesting to see Visier kind of going after this idea of bringing the vendor community together, kind of as a, if you would, as what was it called? The PIA, what did that stand for again?
People intelligence.
People intelligence alliance. I haven't not sure if that's moving forward or not, but it is ripe if they don't do what they were going to do for somebody else to do it.
Was it people intelligence analytics?
Alliance. I think
People
it was,
Intelligence
yeah,
Alliance.
People Intelligence Alliance, and they had kind of a sign up process. Then you had a logo
Right.
on LinkedIn, but I'm not sure if
I think I
that.
signed up for that, but I don't think I.
Yeah, then you got loaded into the CRM system into Salesforce, and then nothing happened.
You get
But-
emails.
Yeah, you get emails.
That was your.
But what's really interesting is if that doesn't move forward, you know, there is a vacuum for that, for, you know, organizations to band together and bring that collaboration together to, again, truly solve the business problems in a unique way that the best in class point solutions can do that versus the large monolithic vendors like Oracle, you know, SAP.
There's so many different ones coming out, though. It's overwhelming.
Right.
And they're all, I mean, a lot of them are saying they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it in completely different ways. And there's not enough data behind it to know who's doing it right yet.
To Marilyn's point, you know, bringing together the data elements so that the customer benefits. It's great to hear UKG and others are supporting the APIs required to allow the cloud connectors to do their job, right, and bring that data where it needs to go. I'm curious though, because our first discussion of the day, we were talking about the RFP and the system integrators, and sometimes they do selection. I'm wondering if, you know, the cloud connectors, or, you know, do you see, you had the DIY is one approach, right? And then you had the other approach, kind of custom. Where are those system integrators? Are they on the custom side, or are they kind of servicing the employer that needs these integrations and they're on the DIY side, or are they kind of both?
They don't do it in, I don't know. I've worked with a lot of those system integrators in the past. And
I mean, that's their name, is integrating systems, right?
Right,
So
but they don't, I mean,
custom.
they don't typically, I mean, yeah, I think they prefer to do custom oftentimes.
And it doesn't scale.
If they can do it internally, but it doesn't benefit their clients. It depends on if they're, it depends on if they're trying to benefit. I mean, I don't want to say, sometimes it doesn't benefit them to use a third party, to use a platform where it's going to save their client money.
That and as a former SI, I will attest to that. So when we built out all of our integrations on the SAP SuccessFactors ecosystem at the time, and it's changed since then, but at the time, the best user experience was provided by using Boomi. We never thought about reusability for our clients. We thought about it for us. But at the end of the day, when there were updates and things occurred or potential vulnerabilities where things could break, that was a change order, and that became a revenue stream for us. So we had like no incentive at all to build that. And since it wasn't really common knowledge in the universe that you could do it better, then we were set in our ways. We weren't really thinking the way that the Cloud Connectors is thinking today.
Right. So they could, I mean, they could use, if they're smart, they use the cloud connectors, reusable, you know, and they can deploy it quickly. They can charge for hours. They can charge for configuring it. They can charge for, on top of our fees, they could charge additional fees for the maintenance and not have to do, you know,
or teach the client
the work
if they're capable, and then have a potentially a revenue.
Right. So basically it would be, they can create their own revenue because we don't interact with the client directly.
Right.
Right. So they can make whatever they want of it without adding extra work, a lot of extra work to themselves. They can add an extra stream of income for themselves, because we don't care what they charge, but you know.
Well, it's good to have that flexibility, right? Because I mean, it still comes down to the value and time to market for their customers, and they need to be competitive too. Because the SIs, if they're all charging for all this custom work and they're using scalable, repeatable, solutions like the cloud connectors, they can't keep that a secret very long, because somebody else is going to undercut them doing the same thing, right? And
maybe they've got money, $100,000 for their project and integration, a custom integration, and they don't do integrations internally, and integration is going to cost $50,000. They can say, hey, we can get you an integration for 10 a year, and that $40,000, now we can get you this new hoity-toity shiny thing over here that we can build for you.
Right.
So they can sell more of their services because not as much budget's going to our integration. They can sell more consulting hours, right? So it can benefit them if they use it right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what benefits the customer the most, I think, is going to be, what's going to help them win.
Better service, yeah.
Yeah, they're doing the right thing for the customer. So it's good to have that horsepower. Well, we got just a couple minutes left before we switch to the last session with about the ideal integration strategies, specifically around the assessment space and assessment vendor types, which is pretty broad. But any final questions for the team at the Cloud Connectors here about the topic of leveraging these different reusable, standardized, and hassle-free integrations?
All right, let me find my thingy here.
All right, I'll take that as a no. And in that case, I guess we can jump right into the last presentation with Katrina.
It's me again. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the Cloud Connectors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I think we're there for sure. Looks good.
Okay. Now this is just, I'm going to go through some slides. Basically, this is an open discussion. I don't know how many of you guys are in assessments in reality now that I look around the room, but we can certainly talk through different use cases for assessments and others. And if you have any questions about how any of this works or any integration specific questions, happy to try and work through them. This first part is some study I did with the help of Larry, basically, Larry and Marilyn, I think.
Well, yeah, maybe just set the stage a little bit
Yep.
for just a rocket hire and
yeah.
the baseline of this